Hello and welcome to Magical Journey. I am your host, Daniel Cahoon, and we have a special show tonight. It's a different night, a different time, and there's a reason behind that because tonight is all about time slips, right? Actually, there's a couple other reasons for that, for tonight's show being at a different time. But before we get to all that, I would like to tell you guys about a little bit of stuff that you should know if you're new here. First of all, magicaljourney.com is the place to be. If you want to know anything at all or everything about magicaljourney.com, about Magical Journeys podcast, go to magicaljourney.com. You can find links to all the things there, everything, my social media, my Patreon, which if you are interested in deep diving a little deeper into some of the subjects that we tackle, Patreon's a really good place to do it. I have a free tier and I have a paid tier. The paid tier is literally cheaper than that cup of whatever I had this morning on the way home from Knoxville. What was it? Dutch Brothers. It's cheaper than Dutch Brothers, trust me. Also, let me get you guys' attention to my head for a second. You'll notice the lovely gear that you can find in my merch store. So drop over into the merch store. You too can don some magical merch and be my walking, talking billboard, which is always a good opportunity for me to get free advertising and you to get compliments on how smart you look in it. All right. So first of all, let me give you guys a heads up. I usually don't do this, but because the story has been a lot, and by a lot, I mean, my guest tonight has been overwhelmed by the amount of attention that this got very unexpectedly, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Please be mindful if she's going, because she's still processing some of this. If she's going through a moment where she's trying to process and she's overwhelmed by something, just breathe for her. Okay. Because it's been a lot. I mean, I followed this story and followed her on her channel on TikTok, and I've seen the numbers of things that the comments and so forth she's having to weed through to get to and so forth. So I know, right? We do love Maria. Look, I've had an opportunity to talk to her when you guys are all off doing your own thing, because we've chatted off camera some, and she's an amazing person. She really is. It's such a great story. The story it's overwhelming. And it is strange. And I'm going to bring Maria to the stage now to let us talk about it and meet her. Maria, hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Girl, I've been waiting for this all week long, like a kid stuck at a candy store with the doors locked.
I'm not gonna lie, I've been nervous. I'm not used to all this attention and all this stuff, so I've been so nervous.
I know, I get it, because I've watched it. It's been just like you're caught in a hellstorm outside.
Yes, very much so.
And I get it, I do, because it's, you sent, well, you know what? We'll get into that in a moment. Introduce yourself, and if you will, just promote anything you want to promote. It's all about finding out about you right this minute.
Okay, well, my name is Maria. Weaving Angel 81 on TikTok. I'm a mom of four, a wife, just kind of a stay-at-home mom. I'm just nobody really. And I also have a small side art business that I do. It's the Quaint Librarian. You can actually find it on TikTok or on Facebook, where I sell art made out of recycled books. So yeah, there's my shameless plug.
Right. And you know what? Her stuff is really awesome. Like you got talent, girl. You got to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here's the thing. Here's the setup. Okay. So time slips. First of all, let's talk for a second about time slips because that's what the real subject is tonight. Um,
Right.
for those of you that are skeptical, let me assure you that there's schools of thought in the science community about what time is and how it operates.
Right.
There is a school of thought in the community of scientists that say that time is not linear. See, a lot of folks think time does this.
Right.
It does not.
Yeah.
And that's what the theory is with time slips is that, or time glitches, as some people call it. I think that's like become almost a catchphrase on your channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with that, the theory is that time is linear, that past, present, and future are all happening at once. And whatever space you're occupying at the time, your timeline is operating usually. That's where you're normally at. But occasionally something wonky happens and there's a slip or a tear in time. And people find themselves transported momentarily into a different time frame. Now, sometimes this can be extreme. There's been cases of time frames where people have gone back to medieval period, and same place they were just walking in or driving through or whatever, but all of a sudden they're walking around and there's Victorian clothing and there's horse and buggy and everything is all different, and people are looking at you like you're weird because you're not in the same clothing, you don't look like them, you've got different makeup on, everything is different about you. You may even have a cell phone in your hand. That's where time slips start getting really weird.
Yeah.
And then that may last for just a moment or two, and then you'll be right back where you were to start with. That's kind of what a time slip normally is. Maria's story is a little bit different. And there's some key elements. There's some key elements there that's very different. So, Maria, let's start off with you telling folks exactly what happened to the best of your current memory.
Okay. So this happened on August 12th, 2007. And it was me, my two brothers, my sister, my sister-in-law. And we had found out that my favorite uncle in the entire world had passed away very, very suddenly. And so the five of us decided we're going to make that trip down to Florida. It's on a Friday. We were there Friday. Saturday, we did the whole, family wake thing or whatever. And then Sundays when we buried him. But we all had to be back at work on Monday. So originally the plan was we were going to leave at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon after we did like the whole family after funeral brunch type situation. And we just, we were seeing family members we hadn't seen in a very, very long time, and it's going to spend time with people we haven't gotten to see in a while. And we were just having a really good time sharing memories and talking and laughing and crying. And so we ended up staying a little bit later. We left about 5 o'clock in the evening and we started making our way back home. And it was a normal trip at that point. We were just driving, laughing, listening to music, just having a really good time. We don't get to spend a lot of time with all of us siblings together in one room at that point. So it was nice to kind of have this mini trip together. And so we got through Florida, crossed over the border, and I remember seeing the Flying J sign and going, okay, I have to get gas. Let's just, we've got a long drive. We still have like 5 hours ahead of us. Like, let's get as far as we can before we stop for gas and bathroom breaks and all that. And then all of a sudden, like right past Tifton, like I had this like painful, I've got to go to the bathroom like right this second. Like I've got to pee really, really bad. Like we've got to stop. And so I just got off the first exit that we came across as soon as I had that feeling. Not thinking, that there's got to be something, how many exits you get off and there's like nothing there, you know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, so I'm just gonna get off this exit, and it was just a stop sign, you know, and I looked left, looked right, and I said, okay, well, we're just gonna go right. There was no no hotels, no restaurants, no other gas stations. There was nothing but trees on this little straight 2-lane road. And I remember kind of bouncing in my seat, and we were just driving for like 15, 20 minutes. And the next thing, what the heck was that? I see Sparkies. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm seeing things. So we're driving like 15, 20 minutes. And I see like lights, and like, oh, it's a gas station, great. So I make a left into the gas station and park right in front of the pumps. And I jump out of the car and I just run into the gas station and did one of those quick, like, real look around, and I see the sign that says restroom. So I just bolt in, not paying attention to my surroundings, nothing like that. I go in, do my business. And it's funny, this is one of the most popular questions I get was, did the toilets flush? Yes, the toilets flushed. Yes, the water worked. I washed my hands. But so there was nothing remarkable about the bathroom or anything like that. It's just like a normal grungy country gas station bathroom. So I opened the door, and that's right. My siblings were all standing like in front of the bathroom door. And so my sister like runs past me, and I'm kind of like, okay, they're being really, really quiet. And I'm like, that's just kind of odd. And then my brother T starts doing that whole, like, so you're trying to get somebody's attention to look somewhere, but you don't want to say anything. So you're kind of going like, look over there, and I looked where he was trying to get me to look at, and that's when I noticed the gentleman behind the counter. And it was this older gentleman, thinning gray hair, very, very, very thin, very gaunt. His cheeks were sunken. He had like a kind of like a scraggly beard. He was wearing a white stained t-shirt with, like, you can see like the pit stains. It was a grungy, dirty shirt and a pair of like grungy, dirty overalls. And the one thing I remember about him more than anything is his eyes, like how dark his eyes were. And they were so deep. And at first I'm thinking, okay, like, is this dude like, because we're a bunch of Hispanic kids, you know, in rural Georgia, and we're in the Bible Belt, so it can be kind of scary sometimes for people of color to be in rural areas. And so I'm thinking like, okay, is this going to be a problem? Like, what's going on? And I remember like looking at my brother T, and he was just staring very intently at this man. And my brother R and my sister-in-law L, they were very just kind of like looking at each other and like looking back at him, looking at the guy, and looking at me, and not saying anything. And I also noticed that the man wasn't moving. Like there was no like facial expressions, there was no emotion. It was just this staring straight ahead, hands at his side, just nothing there. And so I was like, okay, so I kind of, and like this feelings like is like growing of like, we don't belong here. Like there's something wrong. And I go around, there was like 3 aisles, and they were all about, I could see over them. So I come around the one aisle and started kind of thinking, okay, let's grab some snacks and I'll fill up and we'll get out of here. And the snacks and like the candy and stuff was like old. Like the labels looked older. And I was like, okay, like, but everything was dusty. And I thought, well, this is kind of gross. I'm not going to touch anything. I'm not going to, never mind. And then as I walked back around, that's when I really noticed like the coolers, the 3 Coke coolers. And it was just, the glass was like grungy and dirty. And the lights every like would like flicker every once in a while. Okay, not getting a drink. And so I went back to where my brother and sisters were, and it was just this feeling of like, okay, like it's getting worse. Like this feeling is getting worse. And like I got that feeling like when you're on a roller coaster and your stomach just that sudden drop feeling. And it was, yeah, like I need to get out of here. I've got to get my siblings out of here. We've got to go. And so as soon as my sister opened that door, I grabbed her hand and we just bolted to the car. And I jumped in the car, everybody jumps in, and so we had made a left into the gas station. So logically, in order for us to go back to the highway, we made a right out of the gas station to go back towards the highway. And so everybody's kind of that was kind of weird, and not really thinking anything of it, and we're driving. And it was like another 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, like we should have been at the highway by now. Like, what the heck? And that's when I noticed the lights again on the left-hand side. So I kind of slow down, and it's the same gas station. Except this time, the gentleman is now at the window. He's facing out, and he's like staring at us. And everybody's like, go, go, go. So I floor it straight because I'm not getting back. I'm not pulling back from that gas station. Like, there's no way in hell I'm pulling back into this gas station. Excuse me. So I just kept going, thinking, maybe somebody can give us directions. Maybe there's another way. Like I must have made like it must be like a fork in the road or a curve that I didn't realize or something that must have looped us back around. Like there had to be, right? And we're driving. I'm like, okay, what is going on? And it's another 15, 20 minutes. And I'm like, all right, this is getting ridiculous. And so I start noticing like there's like a break in the trees, and I pull up. I slow down a little bit to see what it is. Maybe it's another store or restaurant, something. And that's when I noticed it's the same gas station. But this time the lights were all off except the one street light, and it was boarded up. Like there was ivy growing all over the building. Half the roof was like caved in, and yeah, it looked like it had been abandoned for years. Like it had been abandoned for a very long time. And I was like, what the hell? And that's when I noticed our tire marks on the ground of us pulling out. And so my brother started screaming at me to go. Everybody was freaking out. And I started just driving, and we were at the highway within 5 minutes. And yeah, so that's the story. That's what happened.
Every time I hear that, I like, and so guys, here's the first thing. If you're skeptical, let me assure you, like Maria has told this story 100 times lately. I'm sure I'm under exaggerating. And every single time, like the order, everything is exact. So, my first thought after hearing this about 4 or 5 times was it's crazy because when somebody is going off of memory, that's how they tell the story. They're processing everything just as they remember it while they're talking, and they do it chronologically. They may forget a detail and go back and say, oh, I forgot this, but the next time you hear that story, the detail will be in the right place at the right time, and it's there. That's the thing that really clued me, and I was like, there's no way. I mean, the first time you hear it, you're like, am I hearing the story right? The second time you hear it, you're like, oh my God, I really did hear all these details. And the third and fourth time you hear it, you're like, this is total recall that she's doing this. But there's no way anybody can be skeptical and say Maria's, a really good story writer or whatever. that's not the way people do whenever it's not a real thing. That's why I knew that this was what we're dealing with is something way more real than we wanted to wrap our head around.
Well, and
Um,
also, I've talked to my brother or I've texted him. He's shared information, answered people's questions on like my lives and stuff like that. But like my kids grew up hearing the story.
mhm,
So you could ask any of my kids, they'd be like, "Yeah, I remember mom telling me the story when I was like 5, 6 years old." Jeremy has heard the story for as long as we've been together. So it's something that like my family has always like I've had this crazy experience. They've always known about it. So it does get frustrating for me sometimes when people just get really rude and nasty about it. Like that's the one thing that bothers me more
mhm.
than anything. But I also didn't come to share my story to like, hey, like believe me, believe my story, believe me if you want to. You don't have to. It's completely your decision. I shared my story with Ashley to try to find answers.
Right.
That was the whole purpose of this. I was hoping, I didn't think it'd blow up like this at all. Like that was like I'm still kind of like in shock over all of it. But it was okay, maybe a couple people might have a theory of what happened, or maybe somebody, is from that area and might, recognize what the gas station might look like. Hey, I know where that is.
Mhm.
Something along those lines. I never thought it would have turned into what it has at all.
Right. And just to verify, guys, I know I've hinted this out to people and mentioned Ashley Inc. to you guys uh, in on other platforms and so forth. Um, but what Maria's referring to when she mentions Ashley is Ashley Inc., which is Ashley's biggest platform is on TikTok, but
Mhm.
she's also on YouTube too. And I really suggest you guys go visit her. Um, Specifically, look for the links to the episodes where she's talking about Maria and her story. Because here's the thing, the next thing that really happened that triggered my oh crap response was the email they got from an outside source. Okay, and Maria just hinted about that, and I'm glad she did because that was my next thing to bring up. So Maria, now you're sitting there minding your own business. You just shared this story. It's blown up all
Mhm.
over the place. You're freaking out because all you like, here you are. You're just like running having your best life, running your world the way you normally do, and you sent this email, and now all of a sudden you've got people coming out of the woodwork going, "Oh my god!" And then
Yes.
Ashley gets an email
Yes.
from an outside
The
source.
email. So it was me and Jeremy and Sophie. We were just sitting outside. It was a beautiful day. Like we're talking about like okay, we gotta get the front porch cleaned off. We gotta talking about like normal Sunday kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden I looked down and my phone is like ding 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 ding. I'm like, what is going on? It's TikTok. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And people had gone I shared my story on my page as well because people were asking questions on Ashley's. I figured, well, I'll just make my own video and share it. And there's an update, there's an update, there's an update. And I'm like, well, how is there possibly an update? Like, that makes zero sense. And so Ashley tagged me in it. So I immediately went over to her page. And I remember like seeing it and like literally like just like shaking. And so basically, what it was is this gentleman, and he came forth, he wanted to remain anonymous. He came out as John Doe, and he used a fake email address so like we couldn't email him or anything like that. And he says, "Hey, I'm freaking out as I'm writing this letter to you guys, but I think that was my dad at the gas station." And he goes in to tell us about how his dad was a drug addict, an alcoholic, a Vietnam veteran who had like post traumatic stress stuff. And um, how he worked at this gas station and he worked the night shifts at the gas station, and he came home early one night. And this was in 1984. So that's a big thing put in there. He said it was 1984, and that his dad came home and told him and his sister that 5 ghosts from the future showed up at his job. And of course, they all thought he was supposedly sober at this point in time. And so, of course, his whole family thinks that he's relapsed. And he even apparently took them to the store and showed them the tire marks and said that he said that his dad said that he realized that showing the tire marks wouldn't prove anything to them. And so John Doe's mom kicked his dad out of the house. They moved out, and he was separated from his dad for 16 years. And so that was the last we heard of that. So of course I'm like freaking out about this, going, what does this mean? Now I am getting more questions than answers. So, okay, what happened? What happens now? Like, what does all this mean? Then the next day he emails back, and it's the same guy. He used the same fake email address. So this isn't just like multiple people. Like, he had to know exactly what fake email address he used, you know. So he uses the same email address, and he comes back with some more information saying that, oh, it was Valdosta, it was like off of 376. It kind of gives a little bit more information or whatever. And he also says, hey, I'm going, if I can, I've got this picture of me and my dad when we were at, uh, uh, oh gosh, sorry. The big place with the big president faces on it.
Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore, thank you. That they're at Mount Rushmore for a vacation. And so, but apparently his mom has passed away, his dad's passed away, and his sister's passed away. Well, his sister had all of the family photos. So he was going to have to go through his brother-in-law to try to get this picture. So we waited and we waited. And that was the last we hadn't heard anything from him. No, hey, we're still looking for the picture. We heard nothing from him. And so me and Ashley had been working on, she wanted to do a podcast as well. And I was like, okay, yeah, we'll do this podcast. That's cool. And so literally, it was like the timing was insane. The day that we were supposed to do the podcast was like 3 weeks later. He emails the picture of his dad. And if you want, I can show the picture. I've got it on my phone. I can show it if you want. Okay, I'll show it. So, but but while we're waiting for this picture, like we're waiting, I'm going, hey, like, I was starting to come to the conclusion thinking that maybe he had gotten spooked by all of the attention that this had gotten. He had kind of ghosted us or whatever, but he had sent a picture, and he created an email where we could actually contact him back. So he sends this picture, and so me and Ashley at that time, he didn't say we could or could not share it. So we didn't want to share it without his permission. So we go live, we cancel the podcast, we go live on TikTok, announce, hey, we got the picture. And I'm like 95% sure it's this guy, because just the hairline, the shape of the nose, things were just very, very similar. And then so Ashley, I'm gonna email him right now. So she emailed him and said, hey, are you okay? Do we have your permission to share the picture? He's like, yeah, share the picture. The only request he had 2 requests. One, that we crop him out of the picture, which I've done. And number 2, that if anybody recognizes him, to please not share his family name publicly, and to contact either me or Ashley with that information. So I will show you guys the picture of John Doe's dad.
Wow, yeah.
Yes.
And I just want to reiterate, if you are watching this and you recognize this man, do not put his name out there publicly. Like, you can email me and I'll get in touch with Maria. You can get in touch with her through TikTok, however you want to. You can get in touch with Ashley, but do not put this family name out there, please.
Yes. And then I had also I kind of wanted people to see kind of like what I saw. So I think it was like 2 or 3 days after like Ashley shared the story, I did an AI picture of the guy that I saw. And so I kind of did a side by side. So this is the side by side picture. So when I was saying that he was like really healthy, he looks well kept, he looks, like a all American kind of dad,
Mhm.
but the gentleman that I saw was very, I mean, almost, I want to say skeletal. Like he was just so thin. But again, I do have this like skeptical part of my brain that I think still tries to look for logical reasons for things, even when there's might not be a logical reason. But like the picture, I can't see his eyes in that picture. He's wearing the dark sunglasses. Um, Also, uh, the discrepancy in the areas. So John Doe was saying Valdosta. I know I was past Valdosta. So there's that discrepancy. So that's why I've been saying I'm like 95% sure it's him. Um, and that just I remember when I saw that picture for the first time, I was on the back porch. I live on my back porch. I love my back porch. Um, and I was sitting out there by myself, and Ashley immediately texts me. And she's like, I've got the picture. And I'm like, what? And I just remember like dropping my phone and just having this just urge to just start crying. It was a very emotional reaction seeing that picture. I think when I saw the picture, it was almost like there was that validation that yes, this really did happen. And here's your proof it happened.
Mhm.
If that makes sense. Um, so yes, it was a very, very emotional reaction, that for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. And this was the next thing that I went, okay, now we're getting like some crazy stuff going on here because the chances of this happening, and I'll go over a couple of but Daniel, this could be blah 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 blah. I'll go over that in a second, but hear me out, guys. So the fact that there's a couple of things very interesting about words he chose to use, uh, the fact that he knew how many people were in the store.
Right.
And there's one thing that I'm going to point out because uh, I know there's somebody going, well, how did he know that they were from the future? So they were driving, okay, and they were driving a vehicle, and we'll get to that in a minute. Um, I I got this all thought out, okay, because I know there are skeptics out there, and I'm really setting up, proving a case to you guys while Maria's sharing her story. So we can get rid of some of the ridiculous skepticism because I'm telling you guys, Maria's not the first person to experience this. She's not the
No,
last person to experience this.
no. I've
And
had so many people share their stories with me too, and it's crazy how many people have had experiences similar to mine.
and she's not the first person to have this sort of experience in the same location.
Hmm.
Let's be very clear on that too, because that's important detail. Okay, now let's jump back a minute. Let's talk about the vehicle. So SUVs did not start out as SUVs. Okay, they were actually I think they were called utility vehicles at one point. They started out as a military thing, of course. Um, the Troopwagen was built in and actually sold in 1921. Um, it was aerodynamic. It was not this. We're going to talk about the aerodynamics as well. It was the first aerodynamic vehicle that was sold. So aerodynamics, as we think of them now, was in its infant stages as early as 1921. that's a key factor too, because the aerodynamics of the car that they were driving, or the vehicle they were driving that day, is very different from the aerodynamics of that time period. SUVs did not really become popular with the public until the 1990s, and that's when they sort of started flooding the market. 1935, Chevrolet created the carryall Suburban, which was, I'm going to put pictures of these vehicles up on my Facebook, possibly, definitely on Patreon. But that was one of the first SUVs that was kind of like, but it wasn't really called an SUV at the time, and they were very boxy. It kind of looked like a merger of a station wagon, an old school station wagon, married a truck, and they had a baby. That's the best way I can describe it. Now, 1984, Jeep Cherokee was the first modern day model of something that was similar, but still not quite there. Okay, it was not the kind of SUV. Well, they weren't even called SUVs at the time. It wasn't even the type of SUV that you saw in the 90s, okay, and in the early 2000s. So there's that. The crossover cars, which is more like, because you were driving like almost a mini SUV, right?
Yeah, they call it a compact SUV.
Yeah, those are crossovers. The crossover cars did not really start happening until 2000s. Okay. AMC had the first crossover in 1997, but again, it was kind of like a let's try it and see what happens, and not a lot after that for quite a while. So the crossovers like Maria was driving were really not a thing until the 2000s. So the car is a big factor here, because how did he know that anything about the future? Because there was no money transaction, there was no cell phones out, none of that. It was his recognition of the car.
Yeah,
Now,
I think it would had to be the car because, I mean, yes, like we were wearing like just like plain clothes, nothing that I can think of that really stood out that would be kind of futuristic. I mean, it was like shorts, tank tops, t-shirts, flip-flops, just comfortable traveling clothes. And then if you look at the pictures of a 2004 Buick Rendezvous, even in 2007, that was a pretty futuristic looking car.
mhm.
So that's the
Yeah,
only thing I can
yeah.
really think of that would have kind of set him off.
Right, because you got to remember, like, even the aerodynamics of 1921, if you go back and you research it, is very different than the 2000s. So the car would have looked, I mean, when you showed the picture of it the other day, I was like, yeah, Gen Xers back in, those of us who remember, cars from that time period, that would have stuck out like a sore thumb.
Right.
Okay. Now, let's talk for a minute about um, the. So here's a part that we're going to talk about that is not in the story yet. Okay. Uh, the Here's the time frames that we're looking at that are relevant and important to this story. Okay. So Maria's in 2007, her and her family. They have the car, they're driving down the road. It's 2007 in their timeline. in the timeline that this man would have been in, based on the story that his son gave, would have been 1984. Maria, what year did this man pass?
I believe it was 2001, I believe he said.
Exactly. Okay, so let that sink in for a minute, guys, because this is important. This man, Maria, was in 2007. This man was in 1984. When Maria saw this man, he had already been, he had already gone by what, 6 years?
So yeah, it had been 6 years.
He had passed 6 years to that time period. Okay, now here's the other thing, Maria. What condition was the store in
The
on
first
your
time,
the first time?
I mean, it looks like an old just country kind of worn down gas station. I mean, it wasn't in disrepair. It was kind of grungy. Like I remember like the inside was kind of like dark. And there was just like one of those one big fluorescent lights in there. Because it was really small. And I've seen people taking pictures of these big places. I'm like, no, but I tell you guys, it was small. It was small. And there was a gentleman who said, "Oh, that kind of gas station was they called an icebox style, and those were popular in the 30s and 40s." So I was like, "Okay," but it was just a red brick square building. Um, it just wasn't anything. It wasn't anything like that really stood out. But it was a kind of a grungy, kind of hole in the wall kind of gas station. Nothing like spectacular or really memorable about it, unless you have this kind of experience.
Right, right. Now, what about, was there anything about the stuff on the shelves other than it looked dated, um, that was unusual to you? What was the state of the store as far as cleanliness goes and so forth?
um, it was dusty, and my brother, I'd asked him like, "Hey, like, do you remember anything?" And he says he remembers seeing moldy bread, and I was like,
Okay.
"Okay, well, I don't remember seeing moldy bread." But that's one thing about my brother. My brother is hearing impaired; he's deaf. And so one thing I have learned through my 43 years with him is that people who are deaf tend to be more observant with things.
Hmm.
And so he seemed to have noticed things that I didn't notice. So, but he said he remembered the moldy bread. I just remember things kind of being dusty and feeling kind of like even the air kind of felt gritty. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? Like it
Yep.
just like in like your skin kind of felt gritty after leaving out of there. So it was just it wasn't clean. But I mean it wasn't like disgusting, filthy, you know, it's hard to explain. It was just really weird. I remember the smell for me, I would say it was like almost like stagnant, um, kind of musty smell. And but my brother says he remembers it smelling kind of moldy. And
Hmm.
he said it smelled of sweat, is what he said too. So and it's also kind of interesting how we both kind of had different senses about things like as far as like the smell went. So
That's one of the things with people who are missing a sense too. That all of the senses that are still present are heightened. So his sense of smell is probably much different too.
yes.
Um, so the fact that he smelled sweat is very interesting. So here's 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 where I'm starting to formulate some things in my mind. Okay, so this man had already, in Maria's timeline, had already passed. In his timeline, that he was in at the time that Maria saw him. It was 1984, where Maria was seeing, a dusty, almost unkept, kind of store that looked like it was pretty much just neglected. We don't know what he was seeing on his side. What we do know is how he saw Maria and her family, because Ashley and her, and I really want to get Ashley on to talk to her about this if I can. In her reading of the letter from John Doe, the son, when she read the letter, she was reading it, and he said, and I quote, "Ghost from the future."
Yes.
Okay, that's what the words was that he wrote down. Now, he didn't say people from the future. He said ghost from the future is what his
And he
dad
says
said.
it. He says it in the email. I'm actually looking at the email right now. He specifically says it 3 times in the email. He says those specific words.
Denise asked what the gas station name is. Did we ever find out what?
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
So to clarify things, like Maria understands, like she has a vague idea of like some things around the gas station, but when you're in a hurry to get into a building, you're really just looking at the front door and you're focused on that front of the store. So the biggest detail we have from the outside of the building is the front of the store, where, because she got to go, okay, she ain't playing. So when you're in that frame of mind, you process exactly what you're looking at. You're looking at the path of least resistance. You're looking at that front door and whatever is around it. So the windows, the door, the old pumps. If you've ever seen some of the retro gas stations, it wasn't like now. Now we have all of these pretty awnings and everything over. This was a literally a slab of concrete with 2 very dated pumps on them,
Yeah.
which is another thing. Had Maria gone to try to get gas, she would have found that probably even the gas nozzles wouldn't have fit right in the car because of the time period. I could be wrong, but I believe that the gas pump change on the part that goes into the car, I believe that took place later, prior or post 1984, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe so. Now, on his side, he was seeing what he believed to be ghost. We don't have any idea because he never like really gave a clear indication of why he used those terms. And unfortunately, he's no longer around to talk about this. But that's a giveaway, not people ghost, okay? Maria, on the other hand, was seeing a store that looked neglected and a man who had aged quite a bit from the picture that she saw. Okay, so, and he appeared to be unhealthy at that time. So Maria's seeing him closer to her time period, which is very interesting, because how do you see things from different perspectives and different times, but they're occupying the same time and space? This is what I'm talking about linear versus non-linear time periods. Okay, we don't understand how this works yet, but it's very possible that when you got 2 people who are actively engaging in an experience at the same time and from different time periods, there may be a spectrum of time going on there. You see what I'm saying? You may have multiple layers of time periods going on at once. So the reason why the store was unkept, she may have actually walked into the store in both the future and the past.
Like they were overlapping.
Exactly. Exactly. This is a theory. It's only a theory I have. I mean, honestly, I'm still working on things. Scientists are working on things. We don't know exactly what happened, but these are all things that are good indicators that something in time was messed up. Okay.
Right.
One of the things that I really find interesting too is the fact that your story differs a little bit from some of them, because you looped back to this thing two times in the same, like he was the same guy was in it two times. The first time he was looking at you guys face forward because you were in the store. The second time he was looking out the window.
Yes. And that's also
So
interesting because in the email, John Doe says that his father said, I'll actually tell you what he says. He says that basically he saw that us drive by again, driving really slow. So John Doe actually says that his exact words are, the car was from the future too. And after they left, they came back to watch me driving by really slow. So that's a quote from John Doe himself. So that kind of corroborates why he might have been looking out the window too.
and see, these are all things. This is why I'm telling you, like when those of you that's watching or will be watching that wants to do paranormal investigation or research, here's a very big clue for you guys. Pay attention to the little details. Pay attention to like cars, um, the wrappers on food. In the case of a time slip, um, Maria, you found a really good photo of several different candy bars from that time period,
Mhm.
and recognized them.
Do you want me to show them? I can pull them up.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
And all
So,
that. Yeah. Look at that.
so you
Flashback
see
for
how
anybody.
like if you were to see that, you go, oh, that's M&M's. But you see how the lettering is just off, if that makes sense. How everything just
Yeah.
seems a little bit different. And
Right.
that's
Right.
and so you somebody had mentioned, well, go back and look at vintage candy. So I was like, okay. So I typed in like candy wrappers from the 1950s. No, that's too old. So 60s, 70s. So what I'm looking at, it looks like it was anywhere from like the late 70s to mid 80s. The type of wrappers that I saw.
Right. The fonts are different. The logos, are going to be different. In the case of some of them, the packaging is much different now. They've modernized it quite a bit. Uh, there's even the material that like the look of the material can be, that the packaging is made of, can be somewhat different. So, you know, these are details that's really important to process when you're researching or investigating these types of things. So my guys out there that are trying to call yourself wanting to do research, here's where you've got to start changing your thought processes, is listening to the details like intensely, okay, and getting those little details, because that will clue you into a lot of things. Words, ghost, why would he say ghost instead of people? Most people, when you're telling somebody something with like, I saw these 5 people come in from to the store and they were from the future. This man did not use the word people, he used the word ghost. How do you How do you process out that? What are you thinking about when you hear that? What is our modern concept of ghost? You know, you got to think about these things when you're hearing these people talking about their stories. Um, Let me throw something else out there for you guys just to make this more weird. So now you basically, Maria, the location that you talked about was not necessarily in Valdosta proper, right? Because Tifton is
Tifton.
it Tifton is right north of there, right?
It's about 50 miles north of Valdosta.
Okay, so and where you were at was SR 376 or 379, which was it?
It was 376 in Valdosta is what John Doe said is where he remembers his dad's gas station being. He never gave like an exact street or an exact address or anything like that. And he said it was like something like Billy's or Bobby's or something along those lines. But he didn't give any like exact like coordinates or anything like that.
Right. And again, you're talking about country folks because this wasn't a town at that time, it was a country.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And so we all know that when we're talking about something, you know, when I talk about my hometown, the town limits, the township's borders may be here, and my house may be over here, but because I live that close to the borders, I'm still going to say that I'm in that town.
right.
Okay. So you got to think about the way that people process and talk about things too here in the South. Southerners, we gravitate to whatever we're close to.
Right.
If if the area where your house is at is 2 blocks away from, you know, Chicken Holler or whatever you want to call it, you're going to say, I live in Chicken Holler, whether you do properly or not, regardless of what maybe your zip code is Chicken Holler. That's the other thing. Wherever your zip code is, and in the rural areas, your zip code may not be right where the town is itself. That's where you get. So again, because people have tried to, you've had people going out looking for the location of this
Yes.
place.
I've had probably 4 or 5 people who live in the area actually go out and drive the area. Um, and I used to make that trip to Florida multiple times a year. Matter of fact, the last time I was down there was 2019 for my aunt's funeral. And every single time I make that trip back, like I'm looking at, and I don't know if it's just like out of habit or what it is, but it's gotten to where like every single time I come back, I'm like looking for this exit. And that's another thing too, is what I also find kind of strange and odd about the whole situation is I can't even find the freaking exit. And I had come back from Jacksonville one time visiting my half sister. And I was like, okay, I've got time. It's the middle of the day. Why not? And I got off like 4 or 5 exits and like drove down 20 minutes, nothing, came back. What's the next exit? Nope, that's not it. And if I was like, okay, so this is yeah, I did that right after Tifton. And so I can't even find the exit that to where it was. So I always find that very frustrating because I would love to see this gas station again. And I know that sounds absolutely insane, but I think it would just be that other little tick in my box, I guess. And
Right.
but at the same time, I'm very realistic. It's been 20 years, and that area has been built up so much. It's probably not standing. If it was there, it's probably not standing anymore.
Mhm.
And I can imagine the trees being torn down, the building being gone, and a hotel or a strip mall or something being built over that area now. So the chances of us honestly finding it, I don't feel like we're going to find it. And I'm trying to be okay with that. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. And so I kind of dropped where I was going with one thing there for a minute. One of the different, and now I'm going to go back to that. One of the differences in Maria's story, opposed to some of the others, which makes this very unique and it gives us a glimpse into time slips that we normally don't get. The first two times, they were most likely both times in 1984 or somewhere around that time period. We don't. We have to assume that because he told his family that they came back around and they drove quickly, they drove by slowly, that they were still in 1984. It was still the same experience. So there's a clue there that tells us that at that point they were still in 1984 on his timeline. But then something happened that doesn't happen a whole lot. They came back a third time. And the third time, there's a completely different, there's a change. Okay. What are some of the details you remember about the building's condition on the third time around?
Just how broken down it was. It was crumbling. And I remember that there was just the windows were boarded up, the door was boarded up, and like half of so if you're facing the building, like the right side, like half of it was just like the roof part, and like part of the top of the building was just gone, and all the pumps were gone. It was just the concrete slab, and then like some like pipes, I guess, coming out of that little concrete stuff. The actual pumps themselves were no longer there either.
Right, which when a gas station becomes abandoned, that is one of the things that usually happens is they take for whatever reason, you always see these like antique shops, mom and pop shops and so forth on your way through rural areas, and they've got these retro pumps sitting around that somehow they wind up being taken out of away from the buildings. I'm assuming that they're collected by the companies that were supplying the gas for them, and eventually wind up being sold in auction as antiques or something. But either way, that's one of the things that happens when a place is abandoned. So the third time around, they have obviously skipped into another time frame here, which is very interesting because normally that's not something that happens. But again, this really supports the theory that multiple timelines can happen in the same place at the same time in a time slip. Okay. Which is what I was talking about how they were viewing each other. Like he's viewing them from his timeline. They're viewing him from his timeline and theirs, and he may have, been somewhat within their time frame as well, their timeline. It's hard to say. But either way, that third time around, they were seeing the store in another timeline, and one in its decay, one where it's declined, it's shut down, it's falling apart. So this is a very big clue too, guys, when you're dealing with these types of stories. If there's something unique about the story that lends to a theory, it builds on that theory. It not only is it proof that, because I'm sure Maria doesn't sit down and read books on timeline theories to just make this crap up. Okay. I mean,
Well, no, in all honesty, like, and I've said this multiple times, I'll say it 1,000 more. If you would have asked me a month ago about time travel and timelines and time loops and glitches in the Matrix, I would have laughed my ass off at you because science fiction. It's Jules Verne. It's H.P. Lovecraft type stuff. It's a bunch of hoopla, and through this, I feel like this has kind of expanded my mind in so many ways because people started telling me about, time isn't linear, and then I've heard of what quantum immortality, um, ley lines. I've heard all of this crazy stuff, CERNs, and I immediately went down this insane rabbit hole for like 4 days. And I had like 20 rabbit holes open at this point, going, this is insane. And then more and more people are coming to me going, hey, I had a similar story. This happened to me. This happened to me. And and then I have an amazing mod. Her name's Constantine. She did some crazy research as far as like environmental, like planetary universal type stuff. And the parallels between the 84 and 2007 they're insane. I mean, absolutely insane. We don't have, the exact date of when this event happened for John Doe, right? So we just kind of go, okay, let's just say it happened on August 12th, 1984. Well, August 12th, 1984, August 12th, 2007, one was a full moon, one was a new moon. One had a planetary alignment, one had a meteor shower. There was a CERN going on in 84, there was a CERN going on in 2007. And on top of all of that, she also discovered that there were no ley lines that ran through Valdosta and Tifton, but there are three ley lines that form a triangle around that area, you
Mhm.
know. And so I've all the people telling me all these things have happened that similarly in that area. All this stuff happened on these days. I mean, you can't tell me at this point that there's not something going on down there. Yeah,
Right.
I'm a firm believer now. I'm a firm believer now.
Right. Pam brought up a really good point about the reason why they removed the gas lines, the tanks, and all that is to so that the it doesn't seep into the groundwater. Makes perfect sense. I don't know why I didn't
Yeah,
think about that.
that makes
Um,
sense.
I want to go back to if I can get it to. I may not be able to get to that. Here's there was Pam also raised another question that's very interesting. Would this be near the 33rd parallel? Okay, so you know what, Pam? I'm not really, I think it's below the 33rd parallel. I could be wrong. I need to go back and pinpoint it, but it's much of the southern states are close enough to the 33rd parallel that they still get the residual effects, if that makes sense.
Okay, I
So
have to ask you though, what is the 33rd parallel? I've never heard of that before.
So you follow this, follow me and follow the eye of Jupiter. You'll be hearing about the 33rd parallel a lot.
Am I
So
going down
there's
another rabbit hole?
kind of the 33rd parallel is a, a a place on the planet that goes all the way around the planet. Okay, all of these parallels. You know, there's several of them. They all go in sequential order. The 33rd parallel, in particular, runs through the like Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee. It goes all the way around. Actually, it even lines up with. It goes through Israel and several other places too. The 33rd is um, really known for being a place that uh, very strange things happen. Uh, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of theories. Like you want to go down a rabbit hole, just start working on the 33rd, girl. You'll find all kinds of craziness. Like
Okay, I'll have to look into that now.
Disney World or Disney in Florida supposedly has some connection to it. I mean, it's all kinds of things, all kinds of things.
That's okay. I'll look into
Um,
that.
there's a lot of stuff that you can find about the 33rd, and honestly, I am nowhere near even scratching the surface on my research on it. Like,
Oh wow.
I've got a stack of books piled up on my again already, guys. On my left side, I got a stack of books piled up again that I need to be reading. But yeah, there's a lot of craziness, a lot of high strangeness around like all of the South in a
Yeah.
lot of ways because of that. Now, let me throw you guys another piece of information. If you're familiar with UFO flaps, these dates may trigger a response from you. Um, Valdosta Times is one of the places I got these dates from. So July the 7th, 1949, July the 19th, 1949, UFO sightings in Valdosta area. July the 24th, 1952, November the 30th, 1954. So these were like time periods that nationally there was a lot of UFO activity during those times. It's very interesting that for Valdosta, and I hope I'm saying that right, for that little town itself, 2 different years, the reports that I found for that area all happened in July, um, years apart, 1949 and 1952. And two of them happened in July of 1949. So there was also UFO activity in years prior to that that was
Right.
reported. Now we don't know what was not reported. There's a problem.
Right. And another thing too that was kind of brought to my attention too, and that was another rabbit hole I went down, is there are a lot of disappearances down there and people disappearing without a trace. No cars left behind, like completely just like vanished, like they never even existed. So that also kind of has me question things that are going on in there. You know what I mean? It's a very strange area.
Right. And see, that's the thing. My mods are all going road trip. Oh my God. Y'all have fun because I've got my plate is full right now. Um, I'm going out of town Saturday for a few hours with Sin Schrader Hill. We're doing a ghost thing
Oh,
again.
nice.
Um, girl, this year I'm chasing ghost and Bigfoot all over the place. Um,
Nice.
I've got a couple of Bigfoot or a couple of cryptid events going on. One of them is coming up in on May 3rd in Townsend, Tennessee. Uh, that's another thing. You want to have some crazy experiences? Just come up here and go to East Tennessee or the LBL.
I've heard space. Yeah, I know. If you're talking about speaking of Bigfoot Lodge, I'm thinking about it. You need to check out the Bigfoot Museum in Cherry Log in Georgia.
How did I know there was one there? Cherry Log.
Cherry
Okay.
Log, Georgia. It's right south of Blue Ridge, and that it's a pretty cool museum. It's called it's the Bigfoot Expedition, and it's a big museum, and they've got all kinds of really interesting stuff in there. They've even got stuff connected to Jimmy Stewart in there.
Wow.
It's really
See,
interesting.
you guys, another reason to watch to watch my stuff. You learn things all the time on here. Okay, so here's another thing that you pointed out then that is very interesting about the area. The fact that there's the ley lines are form a triangle around the area, which is a key thing too, and that there have been a number of disappearances in that area. Now, this is not uncommon, guys, um, to a point, especially in parts of rural areas. It's not as uncommon as we think of. Here's the situation, though. When you get why that why I find that to be a possible key factor here is because in this area we've had multiple reports of time lapse, time issues going on. Okay, the time slips have had multiple reports, some of them like actually uh, dealing with the same store possibly. Okay, so there's a key factor there. What's going on with the store? What's going on with the guy that was working the store? Um, why is it so important? This little tiny store in the middle of nowhere. Why have there been more than one report of strange occurrences around that? Okay, um, there's UFO activity in the area. Now, let me tell y'all something else. If you're not from the South, you're not going to understand this. But a lot of people from the South will experience things. They're not going to go tell in the newspaper. They're not going
Mm-mm.
to go tell. They're not even going to tell their neighbors. They're going to keep it shut, and they're going to keep it to themselves. Maybe some family members, because here's the thing of it, folks in the South, we're not stupid. Okay, we know what people start saying and thinking whenever we talk about this crazy stuff.
Right.
Okay, like I you you don't you don't you think you see something weird in your yard, you don't talk about it.
Mm-mm. You don't. Think you see it? No, you don't. Think you heard it? No, you don't.
Mm-mm,
Nope.
you really don't. And part of the reason for that is because you do have a lot of skeptics. You do have a lot of people like I, I gotta tell you, my southern brothers out here, y'all can be some of the most skeptical folks I've ever heard in my life. You're either really open minded or you're really skeptical. There is
Hmm.
seems to be no. So, you go home and you tell you're a woman. You go home and tell your husband, you know, I saw some stuff today that's not adding up, and he gonna be like, "Woman, what were you smoking?" Because because it's just that's the way it is. So people
Yes.
in the South don't
Yes.
go running their mouth like other people
Nope.
do. Okay, I will tell you that. So the culture here is a little different. So when I say that this is what's been reported in the newspaper, these are the folks that were like, I gotta tell somebody this stuff. They ain't gonna believe it. No, they're not gonna believe it, but you told them, and that's documented evidence now. But
Right.
there's no telling how many people may have experienced what Maria's experienced and other people have experienced in that same area
Yeah.
and just never said anything about it because we ain't talking about this mess.
Right. Right.
So this is something to keep in mind. The amount of experience. I mean, Maria, how long did it take you to actually tell somebody this publicly?
20 years.
Yeah,
Almost 20 years.
yeah. Think about that for a minute. Okay, she's been sitting on this story. She's told her family. She told her husband, but we're going to keep it in behind closed doors in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then she finally decides to write this letter. And now some days I bet you go, what was I doing when I wrote that? Because
I because well, she actually asked me. She goes, "Do you want to remain anonymous?" I thought, No, you can share my name. I don't care. I mean, whatever. And that way if somebody has an answer or maybe knows the gas station, they can get a hold of
Mhm.
me. And she's like, okay. And trust me, like especially like that first week, like there was moments like, and I feel so stupid, but like I broke down on the live. I was so overwhelmed, and I started crying. And I was like thinking like I should have stayed anonymous. I just should have stayed anonymous and left it at that. But then I get people who've shared their stories and been like, "Thank you for giving us a safe space and the courage to share
Mhm.
our stories." So
Mhm.
we don't think we're crazy and people don't think we're crazy, and then I go, it was worth it. It was worth the pain and the
Mhm.
frustration and the overwhelming feelings I was going through. If it helped one person, it was worth me staying
Mhm.
going public with it.
Right. And see, here's another piece of the puzzle to put into all this, the naysayers that want to like try to say that whatever's going on here is not going on here. Like, first of all, there's the extreme hesitance to go public with this for 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Her husband's been on, like, he's sat there when she's been doing lives before, and is involved with her actively. It's not like he's one of those guys who comes home and goes to bed and the wife and the kids are just there. That's not the way he plays his game.
No.
I've seen enough to know that he is actively engaged with his family. So I say that to say this, like, you got doubts, ask him. He knows this woman. He's heard the story. He's seen her responses. Like, you catch him on camera, I'm sure he'll be glad to tell you, hey, whatever's going on here, she's reacting
Yeah.
a
And,
certain
and
way.
even my kids would too. I'm like, me and Jeremy, we've been together for 8 years, but so even my kids could tell you, yeah, like I remember mom telling us this story, and I remember the first time I even told Jeremy, um, we were driving back from Florida. We'd gone on a cruise. We were driving back from Florida, and he says, he's like, I was telling you something's bothering you because you get real quiet all of a sudden. You should like biting your lip and your nail. And I'm like, okay. And he says, I got that. He goes, what's going on? What's wrong? What are you sensing? And I was like, nothing to worry about. He's like, no, 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 tell me. And so I told him that first story. It was probably 6 months after we started dating. I told him that story for the very first time on 75 North going through Tipton and Valdosta, and I was like, I'm just looking for the exit. And he's kind of like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. So he's heard the story for 8 years.
Right,
My kids heard
right.
it for my oldest son is 22. I mean, so they've all grown up hearing the story.
And that's another key factor that's really important to understand. Like, if you're researching or you're investigating something, pay attention to how these guys are acting and reacting to things, um, their choice of wording, a lot of things, because like the final straw with me that said Maria is like seriously telling how it went. Like, this is whether my mind wants to accept the story or not, you know, it's real, and when you first hear it, the first thing you think of is, what am I hearing? And I get it. I get it. There's this kind of, is she really saying this kind of thing going on? Because when you're first hearing some of the details, it kind of makes you wonder, are you hearing right? Are you thinking right? Did you get enough of water today? Did I sleep enough? I mean, it makes the listener a little crazy at first, trying to take in all the details. But then when you start exploring and you start trying to say, okay, is she just another one of these people trying to collect some clout, or is she telling the truth? like when you start putting all the evidence together, it's really hard for me to say anything other than this really happened. I mean, like, because y'all know how I am as an investigator. I'll either put something in a cold case, a warm case, or dismiss it altogether. It's, you know, I like to have my categories. There's no way to dismiss this story. There's no way to put this in the I'm done with it box. It's just not, because I mean it's definitely worth investigating. It's worth investigating not only Maria's story, but other stories, especially in this section, this little area that we're talking about here, the history of it and a lot of other things, because I feel like this is just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And that's part of it.
There's definitely something going on down there, and besides, I think I've mentioned before, there's apparently there's a, Air Force base down there.
There
I
is.
think it was Moody Air Force Base. So you've got, okay, what are they doing in Moody Air Force Base? And I feel like, in talking about this and talking to people about their experiences and all these rabbit holes that I've gone down, I do feel like with everything that kind of happened, I feel like it was one of those moments where it was a perfect storm of
Mhm.
everything kind of happening and merging all at once. You also have to think about it. We were in a very emotionally heightened state of mind at that point. We were
Mhm.
coming back from a funeral from somebody who we loved very, very dearly. We were very, very close to, and that's five people in this little car, and there's a lot. And also think about it. What, John Doe's dad, we've started calling him Daddy Doe to kind of give him his own personality. So, look at what he was, a Vietnam veteran. So, there's PTSD there. He was a drug addict and an alcoholic. I'm sure he was dealing with all kinds of emotional things as well. So he very well could have been in a heightened emotional state at the same time, and so I feel like it was a perfect storm of just things kind of happening. And, it was a right
Mhm.
place, right time kind of situation. That's the only logical way that I can explain it to myself, you know.
Well, and now you've opened up a whole new thing that I wanted to get into, which is so cool how you're like stepping in and like right when you say something, I'm like, this is the next thing I was going to bring up. So let's talk about trying to view things from his perspective, from Daddy Doe's perspective. I love the way you guys like penned that. That's cool. Um, so let's be him in 1984 for a second, okay? So he had been through the war. He had some issues with substance abuse and so forth. Um, I have a brother who, or had a brother who, my eldest brother was in. I believe he served Vietnam. I believe that was, yeah. Well, it would have been Vietnam. Um, he was schizophrenic after he got back. They literally called one of my brothers and said, "Hey, you need to come get your brother out from underneath the bridge where he's been living for a few months now." Um, and he was literally batshit crazy whenever they met. I mean,
My dad, he was Air Force K9 unit MP,
mhm.
and he had severe PTSD. And
Yeah.
within, I think my mom and him had been dating for like a week. Their relationship was a whirlwind. And I mean, I remember her calling me over one night because he was using steel wool and bleach and trying to get the blood off of his
Mhm.
hands. I've seen firsthand and taking him to the VA, all these other Vietnam veterans who they'll have flashbacks to the drop of a hat,
Mhm.
and it's heartbreaking what those men went through, and they never received the mental health care that they desperately needed until a lot of times, unfortunately, it was too late for them.
Right, right. So there's a lot of historical damage there already. But
Very much so.
now let's bring something else in. Okay, so he went home that night. He told his family what he saw. His wife's, well, his whole family at that point, their response was okay. So he slipped off the wagon again. You know, his wife took the kids and left him. Another very traumatic experience. So on Maria's side, you've got grief, you've got like being around, the family that she hasn't seen in a while. She's with her brothers and sisters. They all feel in a certain way about a lot of stuff that they had just taken in. You've got this guy who, in his timeline, was already messed up emotionally and mentally because of trauma, past traumas. But this event was significant in his life because he literally lost everything that day because of this event. So this would have been something that at his passing would have been a key factor in his memories, and was a key factor in his memories all the way up to the day he passed. So why? It was emotionally charging on both sides.
Hmm.
So if time is not linear, if time is actually all encompassing and happening all at once, the trauma that he went through that day, his future trauma from that would have been in action at that time too. I realize this
Exactly.
is not going to make sense until you think about it. But if you think about time as doing this,
Hmm.
okay, instead of doing this, then you're gonna realize that they were ghosts instead of yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of trauma on both sides that day.
Hmm.
um, Maria, you've already mentioned some of the celestial events that had happened and other things that had happened in those areas in those years.
Yeah.
you know I know a lot of people that are opposed to talking about the woo factor are not going to want to think about the astrological parts of it. But I mean, those of you that are open to it, think about this for a moment. The astrology plays a part in this too. So, and the energy in both timelines around all the things can be very important to take in. Um, I want to go back to this comment for a second. I wonder if since he passed in 2001 and it happened in 2007 in Maria's timeline, did the affect how he saw them? Did it affect how he, like somewhat in the veil? Here, this is what I'm saying. Exactly. Yeah, this is how I'm feeling it too, is that his perspective in things may have been affected by all of those things. It's really hard because the key word here is ghost opposed to people.
Right.
How you tell somebody something is how you perceive it. you
Right.
know Maria has talked about the dated the all the things that dated this place. The fonts, the packaging of the products. Didn't you say there were very little or no plastic containers in the store at all?
I don't remember. I don't remember. I
maybe
remember
the
seeing like what was in front of me and thinking, oh, this kind of looks weird. Oh, it's dusty. Ooh, gross. Not going to touch it. And I do remember above the coolers, there was an old vintage Coke sign, but I don't remember specifics, like if it was plastic or glass or anything like that. Excuse me.
Constantine, you brought that, yeah, you brought up some really good stuff tonight with this. I appreciate you being in here. All of you guys are doing a really good job with processing this. I know I can hear wheels turning. Sin, I know you. You're probably like trying to digest all of this. Um, I gotta tell you, like when it comes to the energy, and this is when I first heard this, the first thing I thought of, yeah, I'm not surprised. Um, I love you. Sin is like Sin Schrader Hill is one of the locals here. She and I actually are going out to do something this weekend together. Like we both kind of process things the same way sometimes, trying to chew it all at once. The manifestation was the first thing that came to my mind when I heard your story was you were manifesting on your end because you had to go. Okay, which is a common factor with a lot of these stories, which is very interesting. People are driving, they're urgently needing to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, it's
So,
not well, not just the bathroom. It's just it seems like they have a urgent need of some sort. Like somewhat like one story somebody shared with me is they were down to like an eighth of a tank of gas, and they
mhm,
really need gas. So it's not it seems like they're like the biggest point for me is that there's an urgent need of some sort for something. But as far as the manifestation goes, that kind of brings me back to what somebody else had kind of mentioned. Maybe kind of go, hmm, okay, that's interesting. Was because literally it was it hit me so hard and so fast. Like
mhm,
out of the blue, like it hit me. I gotta pee, like I gotta pee now. That maybe what was happening was my brain wasn't registering what was happening. Everything just seemed normal, but my body felt it in a different way. And that's how my body, I guess, presented, hey, there's something strange going on. But the event happened before I even got to the exit.
mhm.
And that's what it actually started. So I thought that was an interesting theory.
It is. That is very interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because it's very possible. It's very possible that it could have been starting to, because one of the things that I've heard, is sensations that people start getting, the feeling of heaviness. Um, some people start feeling dread or they feel, something in the air. Um,
Yeah, I definitely felt that sense of like dread and heaviness and just not feeling right inside the gas station for sure.
right. And see, that's the thing of it. It's as like, I remember like watching one person's account that they were giving, and they said before, as they were walking into the spot, they felt a very deep heaviness, and it was like they could feel the transition. Was basically a good way of putting it,
Right.
without going into all the detail. Because one of the things I don't want to do is like give details, too many details from other stories for to plant in people's heads, and there's reasons why I do that. There's
Yeah,
reasons
no,
why I
that makes
like
sense.
yeah, because you don't want people to get false memories later and say, "Oh, well," you know.
Right.
Um, and having the background that I have in religious cults and other things, I understand how false memories can be generated by people
Right.
talking things up. Um, so I try to be really careful about those things. So here's the thing, guys. I wanted Maria to share this story because, first of all, it's just a crazy good story. example of time slip. It has unique qualities to it that we have to investigate, that we need to be aware of. There's things that we haven't even gone into tonight that I really want to bring you back and talk about at another time, if you will.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely. You tell me the place and time.
right, because here's the thing of it. One of the things I like to do with things sometimes get is to go deeper. So we didn't even touch on, you know, the possibility of how this may have altered current time. We didn't touch on the possibilities of, you know, it, the idea of, you know, what happened like immediately after that, um, with the people involved, because I'm sure there's things that we can dig into there and find out all kinds of details. There's a lot of details in the aftermath of this that I really want to dig into at some point and with you on, because I feel like for those of us that want to investigate this and really want to research this, uh, finding out this the post era stuff, the post event things is really important too. And I know you haven't really talked about those things as much with people because most everybody's just wanting to hear the story,
Yeah,
you know, but there's a human element to it too, you know,
right.
and I think we need to go at another point soon and investigate the human element a little bit
Okay.
and the post story time,
Okay. Yeah,
because
I'd be game for that.
well, yeah, because here's the thing of it, it's like you may start remembering things in the next few days or so or a week or so that you're not even remembering now about things that happen after that, that, you know, we don't know yet. We don't know
Yeah.
because this has only been going on what, a week or two.
No, we're going almost a month now.
Oh, a
The
month.
first email we got from John Doe was, I believe, hang on, I've got the email right here. I can tell you the date. It was uh, March 6th, or sorry, yeah, March 16th.
Okay, so we are almost on that month period.
Yeah, almost a
That
month. That
that's
blows my
still,
mind.
yeah.
This literally has like consumed my life for the past month.
The thing that's really important to know about that though, for you and for them, is so much has gone on since this actually broke that you haven't had a lot of time to process at times.
No,
Like
no.
there were nights when you were in a live, you know, almost all week long,
Yeah,
every
I
night.
literally, I have been going live every single night since then. Um, and like today, like I go in the, I've always gone in the mornings to do, I do my art in the mornings normally. And so I had like one or two people in there. I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing? They go away. I just kept the live on, do my art. And now I have like 20, 30 people in the morning because I'm going. And I feel bad. I like I'm ignoring them. And I was like, I kind of put my art to the side or whatever. But like today, I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna take a break today. And it was actually really nice. I I got my living room swept and mopped up really good. I got all the dishes done. I got all the counters
Mhm.
wiped off. So I was like, okay, I actually feel productive today. I got two loads of laundry done. So I feel more productive. But yeah, like this, like the past, since all this kind of happened, it's just I've been on like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning some nights
Mhm.
on the live, and I'm just like, okay, guys, I've got to go to bed. I've got to be up in like 5 hours to get the short one to bed, to school in the morning. So, it's been crazy. It's been very, very crazy.
And I know there was one night I was in the live with you and some other people, and poor poor guy. The hubby don't even get sleep anymore. His whole world is
No,
like,
no, no. Well, he just it's also because like by the time he gets home, it's dinner time, and then it's okay, I gotta get little one in bath. And he's like, I want to spend a little bit of time with my family. And so and he has to be at work at 3 o'clock in the morning. So for him to even get 8 hours of sleep, he's got to be in bed like at 7 o'clock at night, and Maggie
Mm,
doesn't even go to bed until 7:30. So, and then he ends up getting that second wind, and next thing he knows, it's 11 o'clock at night, and he's just now going to bed. Like last night, I don't think he went to bed until like 11:30 last night. So I was like,
yeah.
oh my gosh. So he kind of came home today. He's like, I'm so tired. And he was in bed by 8 o'clock tonight. So
Yeah.
that's a rarity right there.
Yeah. I can tell you guys, like on a like up close and personal, like with my job, today's a good example. I wound up, I had to stay I was in Knoxville. I had to stay in Knoxville longer than I was planning on because I got off work last night and my check engine light came on. I was going to leave straight from work and drive the 4 hours back home. I was actually past Knoxville over in Pigeon Forge. And I was like, no, I'm gonna nap for a little bit. Then I'm gonna get up and go take my car, have it checked out. Thank God it was just a dirty sensor. Oh, thank God. And so I was like able to drive home, but I did that. I got home at one something. I was like, okay. I touched base with a couple of people. I got to get touch base with my folks. Um, and I touched base with a couple of people before I laid down. I laid down. I got like woke up at 7 o'clock, and it's like all week long. Like there was construction going on in this building too this week. So all week long, I've been in that kind of sleep deprivation mode. So I can tell you now, guys, it's no joke when you're trying to like get those. You work like crazy hours, and you're
Yeah.
trying to get those Z's. Like I feel for him because I know from personal point. So
Yeah.
this the aftermath has affected the family life has affected a
Yeah.
lot of things, and so it'll be interesting to see how things as this progresses, what may come up, what memories may trigger of things in the post experience time, may have happened that would maybe not have happened if this experience would have not have happened, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
were there changes in your reality based on this? Obviously there were. Perception wise, you had some things going on there because did I really see that? Was this real? That kind of thing.
Oh
but
yeah. Yeah.
but was the timelines altered? Were there other things that may have happened that that as you start to process more and more, you go, oh shit, this happened. Was that because of the experience? So
Actually been asked a question similar to that, and there's a period that I always call the series of unfortunate events that happened, probably
mm,
about 4 to 5 months after that.
mhm.
Um, and I, and since that I was asked that question, I've been kind of wondering, like, was that a result? Did it have anything to do with it? Because it was a lot of bad stuff happened, like boom, 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 boom. So I've started like kind of question that since that question was actually brought up to me.
Yeah, so I mean, these are things we'll explore in the next time we have a conversation on
Yeah,
here, because
definitely.
I definitely feel like that's a thing that needs to happen, is for us to explore the other side of this. Um, I gotta tell you, first of all, thank you for coming on again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot
Oh,
thank
you're
you enough
welcome.
for sharing this story with our folks. Um, Hopefully, in sharing it, it becomes a little more. Uh, uh, it becomes more therapeutic for you each time, because I know it's really important to kind of how to like I ask myself all the time after an experience, you know, how do I normalize this for my life?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and I think that's really important. Hopefully that will doing these podcasts, all those darn podcasters knocking on everybody's door, you know, if if anything, hopefully doing these podcasts and processing through those ways will help out some too. Um, what are your final thoughts tonight on before we wrap this up?
My final thoughts.
Mhm.
Um, I think with as much as I've come to piece a lot of it, I think I'm always going to have questions that I think I'm always going to be searching for. Um, but I think it's just me trying to come up with a healthier way to try to process it all, where it doesn't feel like it's so consuming.
Yeah.
And I really do feel like that is what it has become. It has been consuming because before this, I mean, like, I would think about it like when a certain song would play. I think about it. It was a song that was playing on the radio. Or if like I'd be coming home from Florida, I would look for the exit. And I'd have a dream about it once or maybe twice a year. But it was never like in the forefront of my mind constantly. And I feel like it's just been in my mind constantly since all of this started. So I think it's just trying to find a healthier way to kind of process it and accept things for what they are. You know what I mean?
Definitely, definitely. Constantine, before we wrap it up, I want you to, if you're on Facebook, look me up. I want to get that connection with you. You have some really good insight. I can tell you've got a good way of thinking and processing stuff. I like that. So keep in touch. Um,
Yeah, Constantine is awesome. I will tell you that. She's amazing.
so you know Constantine?
That's the Constantine that gave me all the planetary information and the
Oh my
CERN
gosh.
information. That's
Oh
her.
my
She's
gosh.
amazing.
Absolutely 100% amazing. Like I'm like over here going, I don't know you, but I need to know you.
Yeah, she's
Um,
one of my mods, and like we text all the time, so we become pretty good friends.
oh yeah, see now you okay, good. Yeah. Because I love a good brain. I love a good brain. Somebody who's
Yeah, she
actually
has a
like
great
in it and
brain. She
things.
has a great brain. She
You
thought
know,
of
because
things I didn't even think of. So
I'm fan possibly. Here's the thing though, because I deal with like some low key, low primitive people some days, okay, in my job. So when I get off work and I get to deal with people that actually think, it's good. It's good. Um, Maria, I'm gonna go on and wrap it up. I'm gonna pull you
sounds
back. If you need to go, that's good too. If not, if you want to hang out for a moment when I close out the show, we can touch base for a moment. Then that's good
okay.
too.
That's fine.
Awesome. All right.
Awesome.
Good deal. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. This is the story that I was talking about for over a week. And now you've heard it. I'm telling you, was I wrong? I was not wrong about this at all, right? This is a event worth investigating. It's an event worth um, exploring and researching and finding out all the answers we can find out, like any other event that's crossed my desk. I gotta tell you, I've got a stack of books on that is in my wish list now um, for time slips. I want to dig into this research. Uh, if you watched all the way through to this point tonight, do not forget to like, share, and comment. Here's a question for you. What do you think time slips are really about? Do you think time is linear? Do you think that time is all things, all time periods happening at once. What's your thoughts on time? And do you believe that time slips can not only just happen, but they alter the current time that we're in? There's something to talk about in the comments. Again, remember magicaljourney.com. I'm on Facebook under Magical Journey, and we also have the Magical Journey group on Facebook. It's really important to do those things. It's even more important to check out my Patreon, because there is always things that's going to be placed on my Patreon, like photos and so forth, some updates. I may actually get around to finishing an article or two here soon to post on there. So my Patreon, get in touch with it, please, and thank you. All right, I love you guys. Thank you all for coming on tonight. And remember, may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. We must have been something in our past.